Yeah.
So I have a friend of mine who is, a Christian philosopher, and we both share the faith, but I approach things from an Aristotelian Thomist perspective. He's an idealist, and I'm
Hmm.
wondering, uh, kind of speaking to him first, what are your metaphysical arguments against idealism? And then second, I wonder, well, let's leave aside the theology for a second. Just how would you go about addressing idealism? Or is it possible that you could have a marriage between idealism and Aristotelianism somehow?
Yeah, this is complicated. I've been talking to some idealists recently,
Yeah.
some who are theistic idealists in particular, right? Because I
Hmm.
think that makes the most sense. If you're an atheist, idealism is pretty difficult to make sense of. I mean, how exactly does the physical world come into being at all, right? Whereas if you've got God, you have Berkeley's answer, right? Some system of ideas in God's mind, and that gives a kind of coherency and a unity to the physical world. So I think that's the most viable alternative here, would be a kind of theistic version of it. And what it really ends up coming down to is the idea, they'll often press the idea that we're something like characters in a novel that God is telling to himself, or something like that, right?
Hmm.
So uh, and it's an interesting idea, but I just think that I think they're pushing that metaphor much too far. I mean, there's some analogy between me and Frodo, maybe, but I'm real in a way that Frodo isn't, right? And I mean, God, I'm sure has all kinds of ideas about Frodo too, but that doesn't make him into a real person in the way that it does me. So I don't know exactly. It's not terribly easy to say what he's done for me that he didn't do for Frodo, but it has something to do with existence, right? He's
Yeah.
given me some act of existence that makes a difference. And then once you've got that in picture, then you've got to say, well, what does this act of existence do, right? Well, it has to combine with a nature or an essence of some kind, right? This is Aquinas' notion of existence in essence. And now, so now I've got to have an essence. So now suppose we say, okay, so fine. There are finite minds. We'll go all the way back to George Berkeley, right? There's God, and there's a bunch of finite minds, and that's it. No material world, really. Everything is just ideas in God's mind or in our mind. Yeah. I mean, it makes. How should I put this? It just seems to me that it's a simpler picture of the world to suppose that the material things that we seem to see and interact with are really there. Right?
Hmm.
It just seems to me that it's going to be vastly more complicated to say, well, no, they're not really there. But don't worry, there's a system of ideas out there in God's mind that makes it all look like they're really there.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, I guess that's possible. But I mean, why shouldn't I just take my experience more at face value and assume that there really is this pen here in my hand, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Well, I've heard some people say that the reason why they don't think an objective world exists is because of quantum theory or, I don't know, advancements in
yeah,
physics. I mean, obviously, you've been doing work in that area, or at least you know the literature quite a
yeah.
bit. What would you say in response?
Yeah, I think that that's based on some kind of confusion. So here's my way of thinking about it. When the quantum revolution hit, right, everybody was committed to a kind of philosophical materialism in which the world is deterministic and it's all bottom up, right? It's all very like Democritus or Descartes, right? And so the quantum revolution hit and said, wow, things are not maybe deterministic. Uh, these little objects don't seem to have definite positions. Uh, and, and, and so the reaction was, wow, then there's no reality there at all, right? Because the reality isn't meeting the expectations that they brought to it, the materialistic expectations they brought to it, the
Yeah.
sort of micro-physicalist assumptions that they were bringing
Hmm.
to it. And my view is, look, we should never have expected those things in the first place, right? And so, in fact, what I think the quantum revolution does, it doesn't convince us there's no physical reality at all. What it really shows is that the physical reality we all believed in as in common sense before the scientific revolution, that's real. That's really what it's done. It's put that kind of stuff back in the driver's seat, so to speak. And this is the way Bohr understood it, I think. Bohr is saying, look, there's our macroscopic world of common sense. That's the real world. And then there's the quantum stuff, which is a realm of potentiality that interacts with this macroscopic world in various ways.
Mm-hmm.
We describe that mathematically. So that's closer to being the right answer, and it's certainly the way that Aristotelian would think about it. See, I think that's just a misunderstanding of quantum theory based on frustrated materialistic expectations.